Hello, I'm Pal and welcome. Now today I'm going to teach you how to escape using social media. And there are two aspects to this, okay? First of all, we're using social media because it's free, okay? And it's social media, as we know, can be a bit of a time suck, all right? But the purpose of this one is not to save time, but to allow you to use your time well and enjoy your time on social media, okay? The two aspects are, number one, kind of creating a really great space, okay? A great space with social media where you can go and feel inspired and motivated and also reassured, and where you can connect with people or companies that have something to offer you. I use some of my social media for business as well, and I'll touch on that because also for me that is an escape, what I do. And it can be quite useful and interesting if you want to use social media for business or for networking, that kind of thing. Some people I know use it so well. I mean, they really do stand out. And so you can always connect with people like that who are so good at networking and make really great connections, which can be also very, very useful if perhaps you don't get out much or you can't afford to travel. Should mention, if you're younger and if you're older, remember safety first on social media, because really you don't know who these people are, okay? So just bear that in mind. And I hate to say it, but usually if something appears to be too good to be true, it generally is, because I'm always getting people contacting me to tell me I've won something, and then I dig a little bit deeper and it is a scam, okay? And this happens a lot if you follow and if you comment on quite famous people. Somebody will go along and they will create a fake account and they will contact you. So you might put a comment on somebody's, Instagram, and then you get a message and it looks like it's from them. I'm sorry, but it usually isn't, all right? That's not to say that you won't connect with famous people, because I do, and it's so much fun. But usually, if you connect with somebody famous, they are going to reply on the thread, okay? They're going to reply to what you posted on that thread. They're not going to DM you, okay? They might DM you, but then double check that they are who they say they are. There's lots of charities and other things on the internet where you can go and learn more about how to be safe on social media. So I'm just going to do the fun stuff, all right? Okay. The second aspect, the way that I use social media to escape, and actually thinking about it, I don't use this enough, okay? But it's something that I taught and explained in my practical training on awareness of fear of success. And that is curating your social media to find the things or the people or the places that kind of make you a little bit scared, that kind of make you a little bit excited or jealous or even nostalgic, but something that kind of feels like success to you, okay? And the great thing about social media is a lot of the time you can follow those accounts, you can follow things that feel like success to you. And sometimes when you follow that, you realize, I don't really care about this. And then you can realize that it's just it's not really your dream, it's not really your path for the moment. And that can be very, very helpful to help you to move on to the things that you really want to do or have or be your real fear of success. And I used this so much before I went traveling, and I was following a lot of accounts that had these amazing yurts and tents and tree houses and all this kind of thing. And when I saw it, I knew it's what I wanted to do, but it also kind of made me scared and it made me feel a bit like, oh. And later, when I'd done all the traveling and everything, I was talking to a friend, and she said, I love your Instagram posts, but they make me feel really scared. And I went, yes, because it's something that you want, but that you're scared of, okay? So that's another thing you can do. And that's kind of simple, isn't it? Okay. So be aware as you're using your social media, if you have things that make you feel a bit, ooh, sometimes it could even be connecting with like a professional body that you think is beyond you, So it's like if there's if it's association or something and you think, wow, Could I really be, like for me, Professional Speakers Association, could I really be part of that? Could that, am I good enough? Am I, wow, one day could I feel at home there, and that kind of thing. Making those connections is great, because then you also get to connect, you get to go and have a little look at that. And I, for example, that particular group, I went physically to a few of the events, and then I found out I was only supposed to go to like 2, and then I was either supposed to join or not join. But then also they started doing a lot of virtual events during the pandemic, and I met so many people on that. And I'm going to be honest, I also saw some talks that were on there that I didn't think were that great. And it helped me to kind of see, well, actually, okay, so maybe I've got a lot to learn and do, but I'm good at this and I'm good at that. And I know how to talk to a room. And so you kind of learn. And also, honestly, I'm so interested in what I do. I love what I do so much that if I watch other people's talks, I'm listening to it and I'm like, yeah, but I talk about travel and massage and spas and healing and mung bean stuff. And if I was listening to my talk, I'd love it, because it's the stuff I care about and I'm interested in. And so, sometimes when you see other people, you think, well, they're very technically good. But it's like Instagram, you see the stuff and you think, yeah, but I don't really care about that. So I'm not going to pay attention. Okay, so let's get practical and get into the practical teaching of this, right? So I have 4 social media accounts and I use them in different ways. So these are the ways that I use them. Now, you may use your accounts slightly differently. You might use different accounts. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. With Twitter, now I use Twitter and it's probably my least connected. I don't have that many followers or on Twitter. Here's what's really useful. And if you are into writing, okay, and if you want to connect with writers, publishers, journalists, anything like that, Twitter's your place to go, honestly. And you can even find pitch requests on there. So, for example, journalists or publishers asking for people to submit pitches or book submissions, things like that. So that's quite exciting. Now, if Twitter had been around when I was a teenager, I would have been all over it, okay, because I was, writing was really my thing back then. And I would have been friends with all the publishers and all the editors and all the agents. And I would have been precocious and I would have been defending them all and all that. And I would have been on there all the time, and I probably would have failed my exams because I would have been on there all the time. Twitter, I find, is really useful for me as a writer, and also if I want to get some exposure as like an expert on things. So that's where I connect with journalists from really big publications, and I say, hey, I can give you credit about that, I can do that there. So there are special hashtags for that, which is journo request. And, you can go on there and have really top media asking for somebody who knows about this or something like that. I'd just be a bit careful with that, okay? Because if you're dealing with journalists, and I say this speaking as a journalist, don't ever say anything to a journalist that you wouldn't want to appear on the front page of a newspaper, because it will get there if it's something is going to get you into trouble, okay, or someone else into trouble. And just remember that, bear that in mind when you put anything on social media. This stuff runs and runs, okay? If you say something stupid or offensive, it will live on. It will live on. So as Don Miguel Ruiz would say, be impeccable with your word, all right? Because especially on Twitter, okay? Because Twitter, in my experience, is the meanest of the social media platforms, okay? It's the meanest. And I have to be very careful when I go on there. I usually go on Twitter, I would say I try to go on Twitter about 2 or 3 times a week, because I find there are days, when I'm thinking, oh, let me go and see what journalists are asking for. But it's not a great place for me to go if I'm feeling negative or a bit tired, because I cannot resist on the right hand side, the thing that says it's trending. And very often it's something that's not very nice. Okay, so sometimes it's useful to know what's going on in the world, but sometimes that trending thing, yeah, it can kind of get you into trouble. Okay, so Twitter is great if you're into writing. It absolutely is. Or if you want to get into be featured in magazines and newspapers and things like that, or even on the radio or TV. You know, you have journalists who are asking for quotes and experts on things for that as well, or podcasts. The thing I find about, you know, all of these, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, is they don't know me. They just don't know me very well. And I always seem to get these sort of posts and things from people who I don't know, maybe who I don't even follow. And I just kind of think, why are you trying to get me to read stuff from people who I don't care about? It's like, whereas on Instagram, you know, the people whose posts I see are the ones I've actually chosen. So that's why it's my favorite, and I'm going to really focus on that in a sec. With LinkedIn, yeah, you know, I kind of play around with that. I've had some really high profile people advise me to use it better, to use it more, and I keep sort of going on and tweaking it. I do a little bit here, do a little bit there. I connect with some really lovely people, but very often the same sort of people who are on Facebook, with groups on Facebook and things like that. So LinkedIn is one I'm still kind of playing with, and I find it's quite useful because more and more I'm going into doing things in arenas where they want to, you know, they want to see your LinkedIn profile. So it's like having a CV, isn't it, really? You just gotta have it. If you're a Zumba fitness instructor, LinkedIn may be no use to you at all. Okay. Certain industries, it's like, yeah, you know, you get fitness instructors on there, but I think it's pretty much more on Facebook, or at least that's my experience. Okay. LinkedIn is a great one if you want to connect with people in business. I know that sounds stupid, but we're all human beings, you know, we're all human beings. And if you're interested in an industry, so for example, for me, if somebody was to contact me on LinkedIn and say, hey, I see you do this, I see you do that, you know, would you mind giving me some advice? Or would you mentor me, or something like that? I would be so flattered, and I would do that. And that's really important to remember. If you don't have a lot of, say, professional people in your life, okay, and you're interested in something, people will be really open and helpful if you want to contact them on LinkedIn and say, hey, I see you have this job, and I'm thinking I would like to get into that. So if you're maybe you're younger, or maybe you are thinking of changing your career, something like that. Really useful to approach people through LinkedIn because it is so open. You know, you can just Google that, you can go, right, solicitors, and kind of ask that. And so it's a really great way to kind of create professional connections. If, you know, like me, you didn't grow up with a mum and dad who were solicitors or doctors or something like that, and you want to kind of know what that's like. And I think people forget that sometimes if you live in a certain kind of lifestyle, or with certain kind of people, then you have access to that kind of relationship, you know, that sort of, oh, can I get some advice from you? How do I get into that? But for some people, those doors might feel very closed. They might not feel, you know, very welcoming. And so that's a way that you can use LinkedIn, you know, in a way that people, I think, expect to be sort of, you know, knocked up for a bit of professional advice, a bit of inspiration on a professional level. Does that make sense? Okay, we'll get on to my favourite bit now. Which is Instagram. And I love Instagram. And what I did at the beginning of the pandemic, so back then I followed an awful lot of accounts, and I do this thing, or I used to do this thing, which I say is a bit like breathing in and breathing out, which is if I went somewhere like to London Fashion Week, I would follow loads and loads and loads of people, and then I would look at what they were posting, and then I would unfollow a lot of people, really. But it was a great way for me to connect with anybody who was at London Fashion Week. Okay, you follow the hashtag, you meet all the people. Same thing with spa and beauty events. Same thing with Zumba convention. Fantastic. One of the things I loved about Instagram when I first started on using it was If I did something on Facebook, like there were thousands of people posting on Facebook, nobody cared. If I put a picture of a seminar I've been in where there were sort of, 2, 3, 4, 500 people, and I went hashtag ZinCon 2013, 14, and then I put something like, a joke about how great something was, the person on stage would reply to me. I was like, oh my gosh, that's so exciting. It's this famous, in my world, that's somebody who's really famous. I go a bit fanny about that, I mean, really, there are people who I, back then, if I posted something on Facebook in response to something, there were 1,000 responses. So like now, even now, I will go onto Facebook, Instagram, when that person or their partner puts something on, and I would say something like, you're such an inspiration to me, I loved that thing you did, and they'll like my posts. And if I put something good enough, they'll reply to my posts. And I always feel like so excited when that happens. And I think for the last couple of years, to feel connected in that way has been, that really makes me happy. In fact, somebody just liked one of my comments just now, and I'm really excited about that because it's somebody who's really famous. And I go, oh, so exciting, so exciting. And sometimes just those little things, it makes me feel like, wow, I can do this, not just on social media, but that I'm not as far away as I think from the things that I'm aiming for. Okay, I'm learning from somebody who is like the best at something, and I'm getting better and better at it. Not just social media, but other things. And I think I always remember when I was at London Fashion Week, I wrote a review of this top fashion designer. I mean, this is somebody who dresses people at the Oscars. And I wrote the review of his show, and I loved the show. And I wrote a lot about what I thought it was about, and the story, and all of this kind of thing. And I had followed him on social media, on Instagram. And I got the loveliest messages. Now, this is one time when he did come into my DMs, and his assistant saying, this review that you wrote of this show meant so much. He's in tears because you understood it, and because, you wrote such beautiful things about the show. I was like, wow, that's, reviewers and critics, we have a lot of power to make people feel good or bad about their work. And it's really useful to remember that, because I think critics sometimes forget that. And actually, that's a good thing for social media, in that when we write comments, we ask critics, reviewers, and sometimes it can be so mean, things that we say. And I think if you have to say so, if you feel you have to say something, try and be nice about it. Try and say it nicely. So with Instagram, the way I curate my social media is I keep the people who make me feel inspired. I keep the people who make me feel happy. I keep the people who make me feel I can do this, whatever this is on any given day, because it might be something else. I keep the travel. I keep the sort of people who rescue animals. I love that. And sometimes people who I consider friends as well. It's really nice. But the important thing is that for me, that Instagram is a space where I go to feel lifted up, and I think social media can so often be just about the negatives and comparing ourselves in a way that's not positive, So sometimes it's nice to compare yourself, because you say, well, hey, this is somebody who I'm training with, and look at how well they're doing, and look at, this is good, this is helping me to see what's down this path. If they could be honest, some people are not so honest about the whole thing. But that's what I love about Instagram. And when I'm feeling low, and that changed for me at the beginning of the pandemic, in that I wanted to go onto Instagram, but I didn't want to have all the nasty things. I didn't want to have anybody who I felt wasn't being kind and wasn't being positive or helpful, And what I find at the moment is the negatives I find come in the advertising. So people advertise to me, and it's it's a bit like when I watch TV at a certain time of day. You get all the charity adverts, and you're like, yeah, but I'm trying to deal with my own mental health right now, so I need to kind of be uplifted. Do remember that just as with accounts and people who follow you or maybe put nasty things on there, you can report and block adverts as well, or just say hide. I don't like this. I'm not going to buy it. Not relevant to me, and clean up your social media in that way as well. Okay. So I kind of hope I've helped you a little bit in that with Instagram, because if you really think about Instagram as kind of a gallery, you're curating it. You choose who you follow. You choose what you put up. It can be tricky on social media when people feel that you should be following them and you might not want to. And I find that sometimes it's worth just saying to people, I'm using this social media for this, and I'm using that social media for that. So I can say to people on Instagram, actually, I'm keeping up with friends on Facebook, sort of, and I'm keeping Instagram for more travel stuff or things like that. It's not entirely true. I think I would have to refine that to make sure that I was being more honest with it. But I can say it to people in a way of saying, actually, I'm keeping my friends on Facebook. So there you go. And it's tricky though, because sometimes, I tell you what, this thing where everybody starts doing something, I'm like, why do I want to do what everyone else is doing? And I know that's probably not, that's not how most people do social media. They're like, oh, there's a craze and we're all going to do this and we're all going to do that. Like I say, if I was a teenager, I'd probably be all over that. But I look at it and I go, yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to do that. And actually sometimes I'm like, oh, why is everyone doing this? It's so samey. I don't appreciate it. I want more original stuff and more useful things. But that's what I try and do with my Instagram as well, is I try and put things out there that make people think or feel uplifted. Just something that helps, I guess. So, and I try and keep the bitchiness for Twitter. And the sort of, what's the word? The TMI for Facebook. It's TMI over there. And LinkedIn, I try and be a bit professional, but sometimes it just doesn't really come across that way. But that's okay, because I'm a Zumba instructor. That's my job. And so part of my job is putting on sweatpants and shaking everything. So, I don't really have that much embarrassment when it comes to teaching. With the Zumba instructors, we leave our embarrassment at the door and we just have fun. So I hope that helps, and I hope you can find a way to use social media in a way that works for you and helps you, and not in a way that you feel like you're having to conform to some idea about how you use social media. I've got lots of contacts, as you see. I've got I had 5,000 friends on Facebook. I think I've got around 2,000 on LinkedIn, not quite 1,000 on Twitter, and over 2,000 on Instagram, which isn't really that much these days. Come on back, it was a while back, but my job is not to kind of keep up with all of those contacts, because how am I going to do that? How could I possibly do that? But my job is really, it's funny, it reminds me a little bit of teaching Zumba, in that a lot of times I didn't know people's names, and I certainly didn't know what was going on in their lives when they came into class. But that wasn't my job. My job wasn't to be their social secretary or to be their therapist or anything like that. My job was most of the time, without words, to make people feel, generally to make them feel good, but sometimes to make them feel sad or angry with the music. But my job was really to kind of create a safe space, to create an environment that people could come and just be themselves, and I think that's what I hope for myself, and maybe for you guys as well, that you can create a social media space where you can just relax and be yourself. And I think for me, that's why it's so important to have these sort of 4 different kind of areas because you know, in the same way that I would be a little bit different in different Zumba classes. So I'd be a little bit different if I was teaching Zumba in a care home to how I would be teaching Zumba in a school, or how I would be teaching Zumba in my own class or in a gym. And they're all professional ways of being. They're all, you know, perfectly perfect ways of being. But what it is that it's just a little bit more appropriate to that environment, okay? And I think some people want to just kind of put everything on every social media. I know I do sometimes. Sometimes I put everything on each one. But I think the more you spend time on social media, you realize there's things that are appropriate for each one, especially LinkedIn. You know, you kind of get a lot of, this isn't work related, this isn't professional, you know, and you're like, well, you know, it kind of is. Because, you know, there's you know, work doesn't just live in a bubble on its own. You know, there's a lot of things that support and contribute to people being able to go to work. So like fitness, like exercise, like health, all those kind of things. So, but that's another debate you can get into on LinkedIn if you like. Go and have a good old chat on LinkedIn. And just play with these things. Just play with it. Find out what works for you. And see where you can really be yourself. Lots of love. Take care. Bye-bye.